You might want to sit down for this one because Kevin O'Leary just broke his silence on XRP, and what he said is shaking the entire market to its core. He didn't mince words, he didn't sugarcoat it. He looked straight into the camera and said, "Most people have no idea what's coming." And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Not just what O'Leary said, but what it means, what's really unfolding behind the curtain, and why the biggest players in global finance are suddenly circling XRP like sharks that smell blood in the water. Now, before we get into the specifics of O'Leary's warning and what's fueling this storm, remember, this is not financial advice. Everything in this video is for information and education only. Always do your own research, consult a professional, and never invest more than you can afford to lose. If you value content that cuts through the noise and exposes what's actually happening under the surface of these markets, make sure you like this video, subscribe to Matrix Millionaire, and drop a comment before the end. It helps the message reach the people who need to hear it. Because the truth is, this isn't just another bullish XRP rumor. This is the start of something much bigger, something that could redefine how the financial elite handle digital assets. Here's what's happening. For the past few weeks, we've seen volatility return to the crypto markets. Bitcoin swings, Ethereum network congestion, stablecoins temporarily losing peg. But amidst all the chaos, one thing stood out. XRP didn't break. It flexed. It absorbed the shock. While Ethereum gas fees exploded to 4 figures and Binance was scrambling to stabilize liquidity, XRP's ledger kept running fast, smooth, unbothered, and that's exactly what caught O'Leary's attention. See, O'Leary has always been brutally honest about crypto. He's called out scams, hype coins, and speculative manias. But he's also admitted that the infrastructure layer of crypto, the technology that can actually replace the outdated rails of global payments, is where the real money will be made. In his latest interview, he hinted that a handful of digital assets are about to become the new plumbing of finance, and XRP is one of them. He said, "The next decade won't be about chasing prices. It'll be about owning the rails." That's not just a quote, it's a map of where smart money is heading. Because let's face it, we're not living in the speculative era of 2017 anymore. We're in the era of tokenized capital markets, where everything from bonds to commodities to entire currencies are being re-engineered to move across blockchain rails. And when that migration hits full force, the assets that can handle speed, scalability, and compliance will become the backbone of global liquidity. That's exactly where XRP fits in. But here's the part O'Leary emphasized, and this is what most people are missing. He said that the majority of retail investors are still chasing narratives while institutional desks are already building positions behind the scenes. Translation: while everyone's arguing on social media about price targets, the billion-dollar desks are accumulating the infrastructure assets, the ones that can power an entirely new financial system. It's not hype, it's positioning. When you look at the data, you can already see it forming. Top XRP wallets, the ones tied to exchanges, funds, and Ripple-linked entities, aren't selling. They're quietly accumulating. The same behavior that happened before previous breakouts is repeating again. And that's what O'Leary means when he says you have no idea what's coming. Because the next big crypto move won't be a retail-driven mania. It'll be a liquidity migration. It'll be about where the trillions sitting in traditional markets decide to flow once tokenization goes mainstream. And it's not going to be toward the hype coins. It'll be toward the rails that can actually settle real money. That's why, when asked what assets will survive regulation and thrive under institutional oversight, O'Leary said something that raised eyebrows. The ones that can play nice with governments. The ones that already have use cases sound familiar. That's XRP's entire design philosophy. While other projects fought against regulators, Ripple built relationships with them. While others focused on community hype, Ripple focused on global adoption, payments, remittances, cross-border liquidity. And now those moves are paying off. The old guard of finance, the Visas, the PayPals, the Fidelities, are laying down blockchain rails behind closed doors. quietly integrating systems that settle faster, cheaper, and with transparency. You see, XRP's narrative was never supposed to be about memes or speculation, it's about efficiency. And efficiency is exactly what the financial world is starving for right now. Because when interest rates are dropping, markets are flooding with liquidity, and institutions are desperate for real yield, the assets that can move capital instantly with compliance become invaluable. That's why eyes tone shifted. He's not hyping XRP for retail attention. He's signaling that the next phase of crypto adoption is no longer theoretical. It's already in motion. And when institutions start moving in, they don't buy hype, they buy infrastructure. That's what he meant by, you have no idea what's coming. Because most people are still thinking in bull runs and price charts. The smart money is thinking in systems and ownership. And right now, those systems are being built on blockchain rails that XRP has been quietly perfecting for over a decade. Let's connect the dots because what Kevin O'Leary said doesn't stand alone. His warning lines up perfectly with what Tom Lee and Cathie Wood have both been signaling. A once-in-a-generation shift where institutional liquidity and regulatory clarity converge to rebuild global finance on blockchain rails. Tom Lee, who's been one of the most accurate macro analysts on Wall Street, recently said that this cycle isn't a speculative boom. It's a capital migration. Institutions aren't gambling anymore. They're engineering a new financial system piece by piece. His forecast for Bitcoin hitting 2 million and Ethereum reaching 60,000 wasn't meant to sound outrageous. It was meant to show scale to illustrate the amount of institutional liquidity preparing to enter the system once regulations are clear and compliance pipelines are open. Now look at what's happening behind the scenes. Governments are no longer fighting blockchain. They're co-opting it. The US, Europe, and Asia are all introducing frameworks that finally separate speculation from infrastructure. For the first time, banks can hold digital assets directly on their balance sheets. Broker-dealers can tokenize securities and funds can offer exposure through ETFs. Regulation no longer means restriction. It means validation. That's exactly what Cathie Wood was talking about when she called stable coins the bridge asset between legacy finance and decentralized rails. They're the training wheels for full-scale tokenization. Once the system proves it can move trillions in digital dollars safely, everything else follows. Equities, bonds, commodities, and the cross-border settlements that connect them. And what do you need to make that entire tokenized ecosystem actually work? Speed, liquidity, compliance. That's the trifecta, and it's the same trifecta that the XRP ledger was built for. While Ethereum still struggles with congestion and $1,000 gas fees, the XRP ledger settles global payments in seconds at fractions of a cent. That kind of performance isn't a convenience. It's a requirement when you're moving institutional money. No hedge fund or central bank can operate on a network that freezes when volatility spikes. This is where Kevin O'Leary's warning gets real. When he says most people have no idea what's coming, he's talking about the scale of money preparing to shift. He's referring to the moment when tokenized treasuries, central bank digital currencies, and corporate balance sheets all begin moving value across blockchains. When that happens, the liquidity that once sat in the traditional banking system starts migrating on-chain. And guess which protocols those institutions will use? Not the ones chasing hype, the ones built for reliability. You can already see this transition forming. Ripple's partnerships with major banks and payment providers have quietly multiplied since the SEC case ended. Ripple now has regulatory clarity in the US, something almost no other crypto company can claim. That ruling declaring that XRP itself isn't a security in secondary sales was the domino that opened the floodgates. Since then, Ripple's been on an acquisition spree. Mako for institutional custody, G Treasury for corporate liquidity management, Rail for stablecoin infrastructure. Every move positions XRP deeper into the plumbing of the financial world. It's the equivalent of building the fiber optic cables of money before the Internet of Value goes mainstream. And that's what Tom Lee meant when he said this cycle will be defined by infrastructure, not speculation. Because once the system is in place, price becomes a side effect of utility. Value starts flowing where usage occurs, and usage occurs where settlement is instant, compliant, and scalable. Think about it. For decades, global payments have run on systems like SW, if still take 3 to 5 days to clear cross-border transactions. That's acceptable when you're sending small amounts. But when corporations move billions, those settlement delays cost millions in idle capital every single day. Ripple's technology collapses that timeline from days to seconds. Multiply that efficiency across the world's corporate treasuries, and you start to understand the magnitude of what's unfolding. Kevin O'Leary wasn't issuing a threat, he was issuing a reality check. He's watched the private banking elite quietly test and adopt blockchain solutions, and he knows that when the dam breaks, it won't trickle, it'll surge. So here's the takeaway: regulation has arrived, infrastructure is ready, institutions are loading their positions, and while retail investors debate whether XRP can hit $5 or $50, the real conversation at the top is about control. Control over the rails that move global liquidity. That's the game being played right now. And the assets that power those rails will define the next era of wealth creation. Now, here's where everything comes full circle, because what Kevin O'Leary just said about not knowing what's coming isn't just a prediction. It's a reflection of what's already happening quietly in the background. We're in what insiders call the liquidity trap, a stage where price doesn't reflect value and where the real players quietly build positions while the public looks the other way. You can see it plain as day if you know where to look. On-chain data shows top XRP wallets are accumulating, not selling. Exchange reserves are shrinking even as volume spikes. That means coins are leaving public exchanges and moving into cold storage, the kind of behavior that happens right before a supply crunch. And yet retail investors still think XRP is stagnant. They're measuring progress by price action instead of infrastructure adoption. And that's where most people lose the plot, because markets move in two phases: accumulation and realization. Accumulation happens in silence behind the scenes when confidence is low. Realization happens when that hidden demand finally collides with limited supply. And that's when explosions happen. That's what Kevin's warning really means. He's not telling you to buy. He's telling you to wake up, because when institutional liquidity enters this market, it won't do it slowly. It'll re-prick everything in weeks, not years. And it's not just theory. The signs are already flashing. Ripple's partnerships are multiplying, central banks are piloting tokenized settlement, regulatory frameworks are shifting from if to how, even major funds that once dismissed crypto are now creating dedicated blockchain divisions. Why? Because they've realized this simple truth: the next generation of wealth won't come from owning the products of the system. It'll come from owning the system itself. That's why Kevin's tone is so serious. He's watched this cycle before. The same disbelief that kept people out of Bitcoin in 2013, out of Ethereum in 2017, is now keeping them blind to XRP's transformation in 2025. But the people paying attention, the builders, the institutions, the insiders, they're already positioning for what comes next. And what comes next isn't another bull run based on hype. It's a structural reset, the integration of blockchain into every layer of finance. When tokenized assets, digital dollars, and real-world collateral all start moving across programmable rails, XRP won't just be a speculative asset. It'll be a necessity, the bridge that connects fragmented liquidity into a unified global flow. Think about it. The internet didn't explode in value because of websites. It exploded because of protocols, the invisible layers that made everything connect. That's exactly what XRP represents for money. It's TCP/IP for value transfer. And once that realization hits mainstream consciousness, it's over. The same institutions that are quietly testing Ripple's rails today will be the ones running tomorrow's digital markets. The same analysts calling it a sleeper now will call it inevitable later. And the same retail investors who ignored it will wonder how they missed it again. That's why this moment matters. Because whether you act or not, the system is already being rebuilt. The rails are being laid. The liquidity engines are firing up. And the people who see it early are the ones who'll be standing on the right side of history when the shift completes. So, if this opened your eyes, if this gave you a glimpse of what's really unfolding, don't just scroll away. Like this video, subscribe to Matrix Millionaire, and comment. I see it below because the truth is, this isn't about price targets anymore. It's about awareness. By the time the headlines catch up, the smart money will already be positioned, and the biggest wealth transfer in modern history will be underway. Stay sharp, stay independent, and as always, this is not financial advice. It's financial awakening.